Page 3 of 8, reading the PDF about MKUltra on the CIA.gov website. Budget. A secretive agreement granted the MKUltra program a percentage of the CIA budget. The MKUltra director was granted 6% of the CIA operating budget in 1953 without oversight or accounting. An estimated 10 million or more was spent. Experiments. CIA documents suggest that chemical, biological, and radiological means were investigated for the purpose of mind control as part of MKUltra. LSD. Early efforts focused on LSD, which came to dominate many of MKUltra's programs. Experiments included administering LSD to CIA employees, military personnel, doctors, other government agents, prostitutes, mentally ill patients, and members of the general public in order to study their reactions. LSD and other drugs were usually administered without the subject's knowledge or informed consent, a violation of the Nuremberg Code that the U.S. agreed to follow after World War II. Efforts to recruit subjects were often illegal, even discounting the fact that the drugs were being administered. Though actual use of LSD, for example, was legal in the United States until October 1966, in Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA set up several brothels to obtain a selection of men who would be too embarrassed to talk about the events. The men were dosed with LSD. The brothels were equipped with one-way mirrors, and the sessions were filmed for later viewing and study. Some subjects' participation was consensual, and in many of these cases, the subjects appeared to be singled out for even more extreme experiments. In one case, volunteers were given LSD for 77 consecutive days. LSD was eventually dismissed by MKUltra researchers as too unpredictable in its results. Although useful information was sometimes obtained through questioning subjects on LSD, not uncommonly, the most marked effect would be the subject's absolute and utter certainty that they were able to withstand any form of interrogation attempt, even psychological or even physical torture. Other drugs. Another technique investigated was connecting a barbiturate IV into one arm and an amphetamine IV into the other. The barbiturates were released into the subject first. As soon as the subject began to fall asleep, the amphetamines were released. The subject would begin babbling incoherently at this point, and it was sometimes possible to ask questions and get useful answers. Other experiments involved heroin, morphine, temazepam, or lamazepam, used under a code name MK Search, mescaline, psilocybin, scopolamine, marijuana, alcohol, and sodium pentothal, and ergine in Subproject 22. Hypnosis and magic. Declassified MKUltra documents indicate hypnosis was studied in the early 1950s. Experimental goals included the creation of hypnotically induced anxieties, hypnotically increasing ability to learn and recall complex written matter, studying hypnosis and polygraph examinations, hypnotically increasing ability to observe and recall complex arrangements of physical objects, and studying relationship of personality to susceptibility to hypnosis. In addition, the CIA used the services of American magician John Mulholland to write 2 manuals on sleight of hand and undercover communication techniques. In 1973, virtually all documents related to MKUltra were destroyed. Mulholland's manuals were thought to be among them until a single surviving copy of each was discovered in the agency's archives around 2008-2009. Bob Wallace and H. Keith Melton published the official CIA Manual of Trickery and Deception to chronicle this research into the use of illusion for agency's field agents. Canadian experiments. These experiments were exported to Canada when the CIA recruited Scottish psychiatrist Donald Ewan Cameron, creator of the psychic driving concept, which the CIA found particularly interesting. Cameron had been hoping to correct schizophrenia by erasing existing memories and reprogramming the psyche. He commuted from Albany, New York to Montreal every week to work at the Allen Memorial Institute of McGill University. He was paid $69,000 from 1957 to 1964 to carry out MKUltra experiments there. In addition to LSD, Cameron also experimented with various paralytic drugs as well as electroconvulsive therapy at 30 to 40 times the normal power. His driving experiments consisted of putting subjects into drug-induced coma for weeks at a time, up to 3 months in one case, while playing tape loops of noise or similar repetitive statements. His experiments were typically carried out on patients who had entered the institute for minor problems such as anxiety disorder or postpartum depression, many of whom suffered permanently from his actions. His treatments resulted in victims' incontinence, amnesia, forgetting how to talk, forgetting their parents, and thinking their interrogators were their parents. His work was inspired and paralleled by the British psychiatrist Dr. William Sargant at St. Thomas Hospital, London, and Belmont Hospital. Surrey, who was also involved in the intelligence services and who experimented extensively on his patients without their consent, causing similar long-term damage. Dr. Cameron and Dr. Sargant are the only two identified Canadian experimenters, but the MKUltra file makes reference to many other unnamed physicians who were recruited by the CIA. It was during this era that Cameron became known worldwide as the first chairman of the World Psychiatric Association, as well as president of the American and Canadian Psychiatric Associations. Cameron had also been a member of the Nuremberg Medical Tribunal in 1946 and 1947.